treating them with the natural water with a mixture of activated carbon. So in purifying plants, water purifying plants, they use this type of carbon for cleaning the water. In our case, we are using activated carbon. If you have, for example, if you have a certain water in a glass and you want to purify it, you don't have any way of filtering it because you don't have any filter. So all you have to do is get a glass of water, put in activated carbon, and the microorganisms are removed from the water. So that's how good our activated carbon is. Although it does not work like this way because this one works in a pipe, this one you can just mix activated carbon in your glass of water, allow it to settle down, and lo and behold, you have a clean water. Wow, this is really wonderful. Our activated carbon can be used also for cleaning the water. Another one, you have what's called polymer-coated carbon. This is a process by which porous carbon can be coated with biocompatible polymer to give a smooth and permeable coat without blocking the pores. So this is again used for hemoperfusion. So hemoperfusion is a treatment technique in which large volume of patient's blood are passed over adsorbent substance in order to remove toxic substances from the blood. So this is some kind of dialyzing process. So in some dialysis machine, they use this polymer-coated carbon in the path of the dialyzing machine. So you can just imagine the applications of activated carbon is enormous. Industrial plants, in this technique, in this medical application, this is of biomedical applications because it can be used as a means of cleaning the blood or removing the toxins from the blood. That's why the dialysis machine contains this type of polymer-coated carbon. Wow, that's very wonderful. Now here is a very important fact about carbon. 1 gram of activated carbon can have a surface area in excess of 500 meters square. Wow. In other words, that's how great is our carbon. You can just imagine in this, so 1 gram is about 1,000 milligrams. So our activated carbon has 350 milligrams. In other words, a 0.35 gram, which has also about 1/3, or it will have a cleansing power of about 200 meters square surface area, and that is sufficient enough to cover the surface area of our gastrointestinal tract. So, in other words, even with just 1 capsule, it is even sufficient to cleanse the gastrointestinal tract from the mouth to the anus. However, if the magnitude of toxicity is great, then you can increase the intake of this activated carbon. From 1 capsule, you can go as high as 5 capsules or to 10 capsules in case of high toxicity. So you can also increase the area by which the activated carbon can work upon in cleansing the area. So with this data, we can actually recommend, say, if you don't have any toxicity at all, you can actually take about 2 capsules, 4 capsules in 1 day. Now, the precautions of the use of charcoal is this. Since charcoal has the capacity to absorb any substance, it can absorb gas, it can absorb solid materials, it can also absorb some liquefied materials. In other words, there is no specificity in terms of the binding capacity. Now, what are the implications of this? Any material, any substance can bind to carbon. Which means that there is also danger if you don't know how to use a carbon or activated carbon. There is a danger that you might be deprived of the nutrients from your system because carbon is not specific only to certain substance. By looking at its molecular structure or atomic structure, any substance, whether it's gaseous, whether it is solid, whether it is liquid, it can be absorbed. So which means that if you're going to take carbon, you must ensure that the food that you take will not be contaminated or it will not go together with carbon. Otherwise, your nutrients will be absorbed by the carbon. So what are the further implications of this? You cannot take this when you are eating. So be sure to use the activated carbon about 2 hours after eating. Why 2 hours? Because the movement of food from the mouth to the anus or from the mouth to the large intestine, it will take about 4 hours. So at least by eating or taking carbon 2 hours after eating, the food is already very, very far from the carbon. So it's already ahead by 2 hours, and your carbon just comes in, and so the carbon has no interference to the nutrient absorption. So my advice for people who are using activated carbon, we have to use this at least 2 hours after eating, in order not to interfere the absorption of nutrients from the gastrointestinal tract. However, since you have taken this after eating, the waste products that are produced from the digestive mechanisms or during metabolic processes, at least the waste products are then now removed from the gastrointestinal tract and to all the surfaces of this gastrointestinal tract. Then you have a very, very clean system. The blood is there cleansed. That's why if you are going to take note, one of the profound effects of activated charcoal is to prevent the occurrence of toxic materials in the blood. I'm going to discuss some more of that here. So, one of the medical applications of activated carbon, number one is it is very good or excellent for addressing poisonings and overdoses of drugs. Now, if there are some instances where your patients or individuals have suffered toxicity or overdoses of certain drugs, you can actually administer activated carbon in order to remove these poisons. Third, our activated carbon is very, very good in cleansing the gastrointestinal areas. This is very, very significant because especially so in the large intestine, where toxins are some of the byproducts of putrefaction. Now, what is putrefaction? Putrefaction is actually the process whereby the food materials that were not digested, the food materials that were not processed in the small intestine are then acted upon by microorganisms present in the large intestine. And in the process, this putrefaction could also retrieve water as well as minerals from the food that we eat. However, side by side with that, there are also toxic materials because the microorganisms produces some toxins. So it is in this way, in this manner, by which your activated carbon can now be used for cleansing the colon. That's why if you have heard the word colonics, this is actually a practice in medical practice or alternative medical interventions which purposely was administered or will be administered in order to remove the toxic materials from the colon. And another one, the one I mentioned earlier, is that since the activated carbon has a great absorbing capacity, then it is good for poulticing. I mentioned about making a paste or making a mass of activated carbon and apply it in the affected areas where you have the toxins there are removed through the activated carbon. And of course, the last but not the least, the idea of taking activated carbon daily on a daily basis, especially before bedtime, is my preferred advice to everyone, because the activated carbon, as we mentioned, prevents the coprostasis, or that accumulation of toxins in the gastrointestinal tract. So those are the importance of activated carbon. Going further, we're going to look at the medical applications of activated carbon, especially in cleansing the intestinal tract. Medical studies have found out that that our health is closely linked to the state of our intestines. What does it mean? It means that the cleaner your intestines, the better is your health, the better is the blood content. But the dirtier is your intestine, the dirtier is also your blood. That will be the cause of many diseases. According to the study, many diseases in our body are related to our gastrointestinal tract. So, how is that? It is corroborated by the study released by the Royal Society of Medicine in Great Britain. They said that 90% of the modern chronic diseases are due to the poor functions of the intestinal tract. This is a report made by the Royal Society of Medicine in England or in Great Britain. So this is also now corroborated by many of the medical practitioners that if a person cannot remove their toxic materials or their waste product from the gastrointestinal tract, there is the accumulation of toxins from the system, which is now the cause of modern chronic diseases. So that is very, very emphatic, no? It's very important. Well, let us just show here the diagram of the gastrointestinal tract coming from the mouth and esophagus down to the stomach and then to the small intestine. And the small intestine measures about 21 or 20 to 21 feet or about 7 meters long. And this is where the digestion and absorption of food materials. So in relation to this, that's why I mentioned earlier that we cannot take, or we do not advise people to take charcoal during eating or after eating, just immediately after eating or before eating, because there is a possibility that the charcoal and the food will now mix together in this area. And this area of the gastrointestinal tract is important in digestion as well as the absorption of nutrients. So if you are going to take carbon during eating, or perhaps a little few minutes or few hours or even a fraction of an hour before eating, there is a possibility that the nutrients will be absorbed by the carbon. So your body will now be deprived of the materials. Instead of cleansing, you will now have a result of what they call this malnourishment because of the absorption of the nutrients by the activated carbon. That's why you have to allow the descending of the food materials before you are going to take the activated carbon. Especially so that the putrefaction occurs here in the large intestine. Now, there are several issues that I have heard before that it is not really good to take carbon activated carbon because it might attach or it might adhere to the walls of the intestine. Well, this will happen if the gastrointestinal tract is not lined up with mucous glands. If the mucous covering of the lining of the gastrointestinal tract is some sort of a protection. It will not actually, in any case, adhere if there is mucus. So, what is the physiology of this particular process? Now, if a particular person lacks vitamin C, or they lack some form of substance that would enhance the mucus production, then they might it might cause the complexity or the complex reactions that would encourage the adherence of carbon to the wall. But if the patient has sufficient vitamins and minerals in its system, especially vitamin C or sodium ascorbate, can increase the level of production of what you call it, just the mucilaginous, or what you call this, the slimy substance. You call it the the slimy portion, which is actually the covering. So with that, there is no danger of adherence. But if you think that the patient is not eating something, then it is not also good to take more charcoal. So in other words, there should be a balance. Now, if you have increased the concentration also of charcoal, well, that may also interfere the surface area. But the advice here is we take it in a proper amount, in proper time, so that there will be no adherence of the charcoal on the walls of the gastrointestinal tract. So the advice here is do not actually take charcoal, especially those that are not activated, because the ones that are not activated are normally the ones that binds to the wall. So activated carbon is a very good type of carbon that should be used for medical purposes. So I repeat, the activated carbon in the study that I have reviewed, it does not interfere the gastrointestinal tract. Only those that are non-activated have the tendency to bind to the walls of the gastrointestinal tract. So that is a warning to all of us. So wherever you use, whenever or wherever you are, when you want to use activated carbon, it should be activated form of carbon. That one. So what else? So this is the apparent structure of the gastrointestinal tract. First, you have the small intestine after the stomach, and then you have the large intestine after the small intestine. And the intestinal tract is composed of the small intestines, approximately 20 feet, and about 5 feet for the large intestine, which is the target of our activated carbon. Now, what is the importance of carbon, activated carbon in this area? This area of the gastrointestinal tract is lined up with what you call the vilus or the villi, which are structures in the lining of the intestine responsible for the rapid absorption of nutrients. So this is what I had mentioned earlier, that we should not take activated carbon during the digestion process. Because if you take activated carbon during the digestion process, it may interfere this area, which is the area of absorption of nutrients. That's why if you take activated carbon, let the food already descend after some time when absorption has already occurred, then that's the time you are going to apply for carbon. For those materials that were not digested, or for the microorganisms that may have been present in this area, will now be removed by activated carbon. So in that way, the system will be very, very clean, because those materials that were no longer absorbed, those materials that were no longer digested, will now be removed by activated carbon. That's a very good intervention. Now, this is what I have mentioned earlier. I have to emphasize the use of activated carbon because of these facts. If undigested food residue is trapped too long in our digestive tract, harmful bacteria will start to decay the food and release some toxins like methane, histamine. Histamine causes allergies, and ammonia in our body, which causes toxicity. So, with this